What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with the overall market, what's going on with SPY, Tesla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. Break down what the technicals are suggesting, some very important updates about how the market may move for tomorrow and beyond. And then talk about this data that's very, very important. Before I break anything down about all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, in just about 8 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what the market is doing, some very important updates. So I'm going to make this video very quick. This video is a little bit rushed, and I do apologize about that because I'm going to be very busy a little bit later on during the times I normally record these videos. So I'm recording this kind of early, and I have to record this kind of quickly, so I'm very sorry if this sounds a bit rushed. But anyways, I want to talk about what's happening for tomorrow and also what you should be watching for on the charts. So when it comes to the market, just as a reminder, we had some important data that came out. The PMI report was at about just barely 50, showing that the market is still contracting. It's just not as strong as what some people wanted. And the market started slowing down a little bit once this data came out. However, what really caused the market to sink was when the ISM services prices index report came out. And this was very important for the day. The prices for services went up to about 58.9 on the index. The forecast was 56.4, showing us signs that inflation has been going up. So, as a reminder to everyone, that's why the market started slowing down with fears of the Fed raising rates again and another uptick in inflation. There was also some big news that came out as Saudi Arabia, has cut production by about 1.3 million barrels of oil per day, and they're going to be extending this production cut until December. So some very, very big news. That is once again very, very negative for the markets, and that is leading to some fears. Now, does this mean the market has to continue sinking? Well, not necessarily. There's no guarantees that's going to just continue forever like this, or even like for the next trading day or so. That is going to depend on some other factors. In the morning tomorrow, we have initial jobless claims coming out. We also have Harker from the Fed giving a speech. And besides that, we have more Fed speakers towards the very end of the day. So initial jobless claims, some jobs numbers is going to be very important. We also have the non-farm productivity report Q over Q coming out and some unit labor costs. All this data is once again going to cause some volatility, with initial jobless claims being one of the biggest factors. The Fed speakers speaking later on for Thursday is also going to be big. So we'll have to wait and see how all of this ends up going. But for now, let's break down the charts. How are things looking? It's very simple. The way SPY is moving is very, very simple to understand. Okay. We were calling out this pullback in the markets. This was very, very evident. And if you look at it, we came very, very close to where our 200 EMA happened to be. We came just a little bit below it, hitting 444. We did touch like 443.8 before getting a very nice bounce off of that. So that was more like a liquidity grab. And that looks like that could have been the bottom for this drop, but no guarantees could be said just yet. So we want to be open-minded just to be safe. So we have this imbalance down here at 442. If we are bearish after the data comes out, then we could touch 442 and then get a nice bounce, or we could just bounce from here and just push back up to 448. Those are the two possibilities. We either gap down a little bit, one last little drop before the market gets a nice bounce, or the market just bounces from here, in my opinion. It's got to be one of those two. It's going to depend on the data, but I am leaning a little bit more towards us already seeing the bottom and seeing the market bounce, because on SPY, we have been forming an inverse head and shoulders like structure. We formed this very, very nice looking bottom, and we have a very, very nice wick suggesting that all of the EMAs have been met. So I'm in the middle as of right now. It's going to depend on the news and etc. I'm leaning more towards the bottom being in the market, trying to push back up to 448 tomorrow. But just to be safe, be open-minded with the initial jobless claims in the morning, and be open to the possibility of one last drop down to like 442 or so before the bounce comes, and something like that. But just to be safe, I think a bounce is going to be like coming very, very soon. Tesla's looking pretty decent so far. You can see Tesla came down, forming a nice accumulation structure right here. We formed a nice inverse head and shoulders off 245, and now we have this very important imbalance right over here that's acting as the next zone that Tesla's trying to trigger. But we're getting stopped by the 200 EMA. So very, very simple technicals. We have a bullish structure. We have this potential bullish triangle developing on it, a bullish wedge, which tells me that there's a good chance Tesla's going to try to push up for 255 or so tomorrow. But just to be safe, if we get some bad data, we could gap down first, get a retest of like, I don't know, 250, maybe even 245, and then get a very nice bounce. But either way, I think that depending on where we gap or not, Tesla should be trying to push up for 255 as long as it maintains this level and as long as we don't have any very, very bad pieces of news. That's what technicals are suggesting. So there's a good chance of that potentially playing out. Now, here's the thing about Aapl. Aapl is forming a bullish divergence on the smaller time frames. Remember, we called out on the 30 minutes time frame that Aapl had a bearish divergence, developing a quadruple bearish divergence. We also had a double bearish divergence on the 4-hour time frame, and Aapl just crashed, came down very, very hard. So with that happening, right on the smaller time frame, Aapl has developed a bullish divergence, which tells me that we might see this thing try to bounce very soon. I'm thinking 181.5 to 180 is where this thing needs to bottom, and we actually hit 181.5 today. This could be the bottom. It depends on the news for tomorrow and how we open. It could drop one last time a little bit lower to 180, then it should get a bounce, or it could bounce from here. The news is another factor, but this is what technicals are suggesting. A bounce could be happening and coming to Aapl to try to get back up to like 185 or so. So I just want to be open-minded. There could be a little bit, excuse me, sorry guys. There could be a little bit more downside before this thing tries to bounce, or it could try to like bounce from right about here. It's got to be one of those two. I think it's going to try to push all the way back up above 184 for tomorrow. And I think Apple's going to make an attempt to bounce. That's where I'm leaning towards as we have a bullish divergence. And this may help the market try to bounce too. For the QQQ, it came all the way down to 372, but we're starting to form an inverse head and shoulders. That tells me the QQQ may try to push up towards this imbalance all the way up here. Sorry if this is kind of small, but all the way up here to about 377. I think just under that. So 377 is where it could be heading towards. That is going to be a target for it if we get above our 375 200 EMA. Now, this is looking more bullish. It looks like this thing wants to get a bounce for tomorrow, but just to be safe, we need to see how the market reacts. So if we get some bad news with the jobless claims and etc., we could see this thing come down to about 370 before the bounce comes, but I'm not leaning in that direction. I'm leaning a little bit more towards it trying to bounce and get back to this imbalance and push up to 377. Now for Nvda, remember we called out 466 on Nvda. We called that out. Where did we bottom? 465, very, very close. Upon this bottom, Nvda has been forming this bullish divergence, and it looks like it's going to make an attempt to bounce back to about 475. That seems very, very probable for tomorrow. But we need to see how it reacts to all this information that's coming out as well. So I do think there's a good chance 475 could be tested, but the trend hasn't truly bounced just yet. We're still waiting for the 4-hour to give us some more confirmation. It is still looking kind of weak on the much larger time frames. We could just get a very, very small bounce to 475. So I think that's most definitely on the table, and Nvidia is going to make an attempt to do so. Now, if we gap down, we could actually gap down to like 465 or so and then get the bounce. That could also happen too. That's another possibility depending on where we gap. If we gap up, then 475 can be tested or even higher. If we gap down to 465, then we could bounce from there and push back up to 475. But I do believe this thing may get a small bounce with the market as long as there's not any like bad pieces of news for it specifically. For Microsoft, what else is very interesting is on the 5-minute time frame, it's not looking too bad. We actually formed this very, very nice looking market structure right about here. We technically formed a bullish divergence on the 5-minute time frame. You can see the RSI made this higher low relative to this low. And now this thing is trying to push back up. So it's already starting to push up with the inverse head and shoulders. Could make its way back up to 334.5 by tomorrow, looking a little bit more bullish overall. If you look at the NASDAQ, for instance, this thing also has this bullish divergence. Could be pushing up to higher levels. We could see this. This is the HYG. Also, the NASDAQ did the same thing. Sorry about that, guys. NASDAQ did the same thing. Very, very nice divergence, trying to form an inverse head and shoulders. Could be pushing back up to these higher levels. We could see a bounce very soon. Now, if there's one last drop, that could happen to about 13,750 before we get the bounce. But either way, I do believe it has potential to still form that. You can see the bullish divergence also developed on it. So same thing with the NASDAQ as the HYG, all pointing in the same direction. SPX has this unfilled gap technically at about 44.96. Are we going to push up to fill that gap? Well, if we get above the 200 EMA, then yes, we will. But for now, it looks like we're approaching that. Now, there is this Nice accumulation structure. Could be forming a cup and handle depending on where we open. Formed a nice bullish divergence too on the MACD. This is looking like it wants to push up higher, but just to be safe, let's wait for the data before this thing tries to bounce. Now on the VIX, you can see the VIX got this rejection off this 15.3 area. It also formed a bearish divergence on the MACD and the RSI. So after getting that divergence and coming down, will the VIX continue to sink down to fill this gap, or will we break below the 200? If the VIX ends up continuing to fall, it looks like it's going to test potentially like 13.6 or so. If it breaks below 14.25, if that's the case, we're currently at support on the VIX. If that continues to break down, the VIX could sink, and this could be because of the market pushing higher. The dollar also has, and I called this out earlier, on I think it's the 30 minutes or the 4-hour time frame. On the 30 minutes time frame, we have a bearish divergence on the dollar. Notice this, guys. The bearish divergence has developed. The dollar may start to reject a little bit more and start sinking a little bit lower because the market might bounce. This is telling me that there might be a bounce coming. We could see this in the market just temporarily, and maybe for tomorrow, depending on if we like go a little lower first and then bounce, or if we just bounce from here. It looks like we may bounce from here looking at the dollar. That's what that is suggesting. On Google, Google came down to very, very deep levels, but on the 30 minutes time frame, it's trying to get a rebound. It's making an attempt to do so, but it's kind of weak so far. On the 4-hour time frame, it's not really getting much of a bounce, but it did try to hold the 50 EMA. So it's not as strong on the 4-hour. Still looking weak on Google, nothing too strong so far. But on the 5 minutes time frame, we formed, once again, this also formed a bullish divergence technically. Very, very interesting how this is, forming everywhere. This could be an accumulation phase. I could see Google trying to push it for 136, but it's just looking very flimsy. It's not looking very strong in my opinion. Looks relatively flat, very, very, I wouldn't say weak, but it's not really strong either. Very flat. Amazon looks like it's trying to curl. It wants to push back up to 136.05 plus. But you have to remember that we'll see how we open tomorrow, if we gap down or not, depending on initial jobless claims. If we get some decent data, we could see this thing try to push up. Meta came down, but it's actually showing some strength because it only hit 295, which is nothing too bad. If this is a nice accumulation phase, then this thing could be pushing towards this 301 level for tomorrow. So it's kind of flat. It's not really doing much, but there is a chance it's going to try to bounce as well. It has an inverse head and shoulders. So I'm seeing a lot of stocks showing signs of life, possibly trying to bounce for tomorrow. We could gap down throughout the market depending on initial jobless claims before trying to push higher, or we could just push higher from here. I'm leaning in that direction right now. So I hope that's as clear as possible for everyone. I hope this video was helpful. I want to make this as quick as possible. I thank you all so much for listening. Have a great day. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and watch your signals and your levels very, very carefully. Thank you, and peace out.